Okay, so we're diving into Terence McKenna's Food of the Gods today.
Yeah.
It seems like we're going to be exploring some pretty interesting ideas about how psychoactive plants might have shaped humanity.
I think interesting is an understatement.
Yeah.
McKenna really goes for it.
Okay, I like that.
He's not just talking about, how people use these plants.
Right.
He suggests they might have actually been, essential for us becoming, human.
Well, okay, so like how
He digs into this idea that indole hallucinogens,
into what?
hallucinogens,
Right.
they're compounds found in certain plants and mushrooms,
Right.
and he thinks they may have been like catalysts for human consciousness.
So we're talking like psilocybin and DMT,
Yeah, exactly. Those kinds of things.
the ones that can like really alter your perception.
Exactly. Alter your perception, your thoughts, the whole experience.
Wow.
And get this, McKenna brings up this observation from Gombe Stream National Park in Tanzania.
Okay.
Researchers noticed that chimpanzees there were seeking out certain leaves, but not to eat them for nutrition, for their medicinal properties.
So chimps are self-medicating.
It seems that way.
That's pretty wild, I mean.
It really makes you rethink our own relationship with medicinal plants, right?
For sure.
Maybe it's not so unique after all.
Yeah.
But hold on, McKenna takes it even further.
Okay. Where does he go from there?
He's got this idea, he calls it the stoned ape hypothesis.
The stone ape hypothesis. What's that?
Buckle up, it's a wild one.
Okay.
He thinks that a specific mushroom, Stropharia cubensis,
Okay.
might have played a major role in human evolution.
Now wait, Stropharia cubensis, remind me what that is again?
Oh yeah, sorry, getting a little too technical there.
No worries, I just,
It's the one that grows in cow dung.
Right.
And yeah, it's known for its psychedelic properties. It's like the classic magic mushroom.
So he's saying our early hominid ancestors, while hanging out with their cattle,
Right.
they might come across these mushrooms and had, mind-altering experiences.
The idea.
And these experiences could have been what kickstarted consciousness.
That's exactly what he's proposing.
Whoa.
He connects the domestication of cattle, which would have meant more exposure to these mushrooms,
Yeah.
with the development of things like language, art, religion, all these complex social structures.
Hmm.
It's a pretty radical idea, isn't it?
It is. I mean, a mushroom being the catalyst for this huge leap in human evolution.
Right.
It really makes you rethink our whole place in nature.
Absolutely.
I mean, it suggests a connection between humans and plants that's much deeper than we usually think about.
Yeah.
But how does this hypothesis, stack up against other theories of human evolution?
Well, that's where things get a little tricky.
Right.
The stoned ape hypothesis, it's still very speculative.
Right.
There's not a ton of hard scientific evidence to back it up.
So it's more of a thought experiment,
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
a way to kind of think outside the box and ask new questions,
Exact.
not necessarily about proving it definitively.
Yeah, I think McKenna himself would agree with that.
Okay, so this idea of psilocybin mushrooms sparking consciousness,
Yeah.
it leads McKenna to another really interesting topic,
Okay. Which is?
this mysterious Vedic elixir known as soma.
Ah, Soma, the drink of the gods.
Yes.
So much mystery surrounding it.
Totally. What does McKenna say about it?
Well, he kind of throws a curveball.
Oh,
He argues against the common theory that Soma was Amanita muscaria.
Amanita muscaria, the fly agaric mushroom.
Right, the one you always see in fairy tales and stuff.
Yeah, the red and white one.
Exactly.
So what does he think it was then?
You ready for this?
Hit me.
He thinks Soma was, yep, you guessed it, Stropharia cubensis.
That magic mushroom is really taking center stage in this deep dive.
It is.
So how does he justify that?
Well, he points to descriptions in the Rig Veda that connect Soma with cattle.
Which makes sense.
Exactly, because remember, Stropharia cubensis grows in cow dung,
Right.
and he suggests that maybe, over time, things like climate change and migration made the original Soma harder to find,
Mm-hmm.
so people started substituting other plants.
Like Amanita muscaria?
Yeah, that one, and maybe a Phaedra, too.
So it's like the original meaning got lost in translation.
That's a great way to put it.
Like a game of botanical telephone.
Exactly.
But the original plant was replaced and its significance faded.
And that loss of meaning, McKenna thinks, has a lot to do with how human societies changed over time.
Okay, I'm interested. Go on.
He believes that early human societies were what he calls partnership societies.
Partnership societies.
Yeah, I think egalitarian, cooperative, very connected to nature.
Interesting.
But over time, they were replaced by what he calls dominator societies.
Dominator.
Much more hierarchical, patriarchal, focused on control and power.
Okay, that's a pretty big shift.
A huge shift.
So what does that have to do with the decline of psilocybin mushroom use?
Well, that's one of the big questions McKenna grapples with. He thinks the psychedelic experience, the way it emphasizes unity and connection, it clashes with the values of a dominator society.
Yeah, I can see that.
It's like psychedelics offered a glimpse of a totally different way of being.
Like a different way of relating to each other and the world.
Exactly.
And that challenged the power structures of these dominator
That
societies.
was the idea.
So suppressing the psychedelic experience could have contributed to the rise of more authoritarian social structures.
That's what McKenna argues.
That's a pretty radical idea.
It is, but it does make you think, doesn't it?
It really does. About how our societies are shaped and what values we end up prioritizing.
That's what I find so fascinating about McKenna's work.
Yeah, he really pushes you to question your assumptions.
Absolutely. And it's interesting how McKenna connects this decline of, like, potential ancient mushroom cults
Yeah.
with the rise of another, well, mind-altering substance, alcohol.
It seems like he's saying that shift from like a psychedelic-centered culture to one dominated by alcohol really changed like societal values.
Yeah, totally.
How so?
Well, McKenna thinks alcohol, unlike, say, psilocybin, it tends to reinforce those values of a dominator society.
So is he saying alcohol is like the drug of dominator culture?
He actually uses those exact words.
Wow, okay, so what does that even mean?
Well, look at the effects of alcohol, right?
Yeah.
It can lead to aggression, violence, even a suppression of empathy.
Okay, I see where he's going with this.
Yeah, it can create a sense of separation and hierarchy, which are like the hallmarks of those dominator societies.
Makes you wonder, what if alcohol hadn't become so prevalent?
Hmm,
Would those ancient partnership societies have lasted?
it's a big what if.
Yeah, I mean, think about how different human history might have been.
It's pretty mind-blowing to consider.
McKenna paints this picture of a world where psychedelic experiences,
Yeah.
they fostered this sense of unity, of connection to nature.
It's a compelling vision.
But do you think it's maybe a little romanticized?
Possibly, but
I mean, wouldn't even a partnership society need some kind of hierarchy?
right, to make decisions and, handle conflicts and stuff.
Exactly.
McKenna does acknowledge that even partnership societies had structure, but he emphasizes that the whole power dynamic was different.
So it's not about eliminating hierarchy altogether.
Right.
It's about changing how we think about power, how it's distributed.
Exactly. And McKenna suggests that, the psychedelic experience can offer us insights into other models,
Yeah.
ones that might be more equitable, more sustainable.
So this ties back into his whole thing about psychedelic versus dominator values.
Yeah.
It's like we're still stuck in this struggle between those two forces, even today.
It's a battle for, like, the soul of our culture in a way.
And he's asking us to look at how our society tries to control and suppress anything that challenges the status quo.
Right. Think about it. The war on drugs.
Yeah.
The stigma around mental health, even how our education systems are set up.
It's like we're taught to value conformity over creativity, productivity over, like, introspection.
Exactly. And McKenna suggests that even stuff we consider normal, caffeine, sugar, they can contribute to this.
To this control thing.
Yeah, keeping us locked into a narrow way of being, of thinking.
Huh. I never thought of it that way.
It's pretty profound when you start to see it.
It is. It makes you question all these assumptions we have about what's okay and what's not.
And the irony is the things that could help us see beyond these limitations.
You mean psychedelics?
Yeah, they're often the ones that are demonized, made illegal.
Yeah, that's a real catch-22.
It is, and it's something we have to address if we want a society that's open to exploring the full range of human consciousness.
Okay, we talked about alcohol and how it relates to dominator societies. What about other plant-based substances? I know McKenna talks about cannabis, right?
He does. He sees it as a bit more ambiguous than alcohol.
Ooh.
Not tied to dominator culture in the same way, but also not purely psychedelic like psilocybin.
Where does he place it then?
He calls cannabis a partnership plant,
Okay.
pointing to its use in traditions like Sufism and Hinduism.
That connection between cannabis and storytelling has always fascinated me.
Yeah.
Like weaving a story, spinning a yarn, it really captures how cannabis can spark creativity and imagination.
McKenna talks about that too.
Yeah.
He says cannabis helps us see patterns, make connections, explore language in new ways.
That makes sense.
But he's also careful not to romanticize it.
Okay, right, because
It can be addictive, the effects can be unpredictable.
it's a reminder that these plant-based substances are powerful tools.
Exactly.
And like any tool, they need to be used responsibly.
Yeah, and I think McKenna's strength is that he doesn't shy away from that complexity.
I agree. There's so much nuance to these discussions.
Absolutely.
Okay, ready for a real head-scratcher?
Hit me.
McKenna also delves into the Eleusinian mysteries.
Ah, yes, those ancient Greek rituals that everyone's still trying to figure out.
Yeah, shrouded in secrecy.
Big time.
What's McKenna's take?
Well, there's been so much debate about what actually happened in those ceremonies.
Yeah.
And McKenna looks at a couple of the main theories.
Okay, like what?
One involves ergot,
Ergot, the fungus.
the one and only.
But isn't that, like, really dangerous?
It can be, yeah.
It can cause all sorts of nasty symptoms?
It can, but remember, ergot's also where we get LSD from.
Oh, right.
So are we talking like some ancient LSD trip at Eleusis?
Is that what they think was going on?
Not LSD exactly, but maybe something similar.
Okay.
The theory from Albert Hoffman and R. Gordon Wasson
Yeah.
is that the sacrament there was this special drink made from ergotized beer.
Ergotized beer, that doesn't sound very tasty.
Probably not, but here's the thing.
Yeah.
Ergot contains all these different alkaloids,
Okay.
and some of them are psychoactive.
So they think the priests at Eleusis figured out a way to make the beer
Yeah.
to get the psychedelic effects without getting poisoned.
That's the idea.
That sounds incredibly risky.
It does, doesn't it?
What's the other theory then?
This one's from Robert Graves,
Okay.
and he suggests the sacrament at Eleusis was a psilocybin-containing mushroom.
Psilocybin again.
It keeps popping up, doesn't it?
It really does. It seems like McKenna keeps coming back to it.
Yeah, it's a key part of his exploration of these altered states.
And he also talks about how cannabis might have played a similar role in other cultures, right?
Right. Emphasizing this, like, human drive to explore altered states.
Yeah, like this need to reach beyond ordinary perception, connect with something bigger.
Exactly. McKenna sees that impulse as a fundamental part of who we are.
And he thinks suppressing these experiences, especially the psychedelic ones,
Yeah.
it's led us down a path of disconnection from nature, from ourselves, from each other.
That's a major theme in his work.
Which brings us to the modern psychedelic renaissance.
Yeah,
A period that McKenna was, like, super excited about.
he was.
He talks about the rediscovery of these plants by Western science,
Right.
highlighting figures like Louis Lewin, Silas Weir Mitchell,
Yeah.
and of course Albert Hoffman.
Can't forget Hoffman.
And he sees this rediscovery as a potential turning point.
For sure, like a chance to change our relationship with these substances.
But he doesn't ignore the risks either.
Not at all. He's very clear about the challenges.
The potential downsides of these experiences.
Absolutely. He stresses the importance of set and setting.
Right, having the right environment, the right support,
Exactly. And approaching these experiences with respect.
reverence even.
Yeah, and he was really vocal against the criminalization of psychedelics.
He saw that as a problem.
A big one, he said it pushes everything underground, makes it harder to ensure safety.
Okay, we've covered a lot here, from the stoned ape hypothesis to the Eleusinian mysteries.
Yeah, we've been all over the map.
From the dangers of alcohol to the potential of cannabis and this modern psychedelic renaissance.
A lot to unpack.
So what do you think is the most important takeaway from McKenna's work?
I think it's that our relationship with altered states of consciousness,
Yeah.
it's a core part of being human.
Like something that shouldn't be feared.
Exactly, not something to suppress, but to explore, to understand, to integrate into our lives.
In a way that's safe and meaningful.
And as we face all these uncertainties in the world today,
Yeah.
that ability to explore, to shift our perspective,
To connect with something bigger.
yeah, it might be more important now than ever.
McKenna talks about the vegetable mind. What do you think he means by that?
I think he's talking about the intelligence of nature, like a kind of wisdom we can access by connecting with plants.
So it's about seeing plants as more than just resources.
Right, more like allies, teachers, sources of insight.
It's a very different way of looking at things.
We've become so disconnected from nature.
Yeah, we've lost that sense of interconnectedness.
And McKenna believed that reconnecting with what he called the vegetable mind
Okay.
through things like shamanism, the responsible use of psychedelics.
Yeah.
It could help us heal that rift, create a more sustainable future.
A more harmonious future.
Exactly. It's a really beautiful vision, I think.
It reminds us that we're not separate from nature, but a part of it.
Yeah.
And by tapping into that deeper wisdom,
Right.
we might find the answers we need.
To solve the problems facing us today.
Exactly, the problems facing our world. You know, it's amazing how McKenna really pushes for like a much deeper engagement with these altered states. It's
Yeah.
not just about, personal exploration for him.
No.
He sees it as crucial for like humanity evolving
Yeah.
and even for the planet's survival.
Right. He argues that a lot of the problems we face today,
Like what?
climate change, social injustice, the threat of nuclear war,
Yeah, it's a lot.
he thinks they stem from like this limited ego-driven consciousness.
We're stuck in these cycles of self-destruction.
Exactly. We can't see past our own immediate needs and desires.
And he thinks the psychedelic experience, with its potential to like dissolve the ego
Yeah.
and show us how everything's interconnected, that might be a way to break free from these patterns.
That's the idea.
But wouldn't that require a massive shift in like our whole worldview
Absolutely. And that's exactly what McKenna's calling for.
for a radical transformation?
A complete change in how we see ourselves, our relationship with nature, even the nature of reality.
McKenna often talks about the felt presence of the other,
Yeah.
like this transcendent intelligence you can access through the psychedelic experience.
Right. It's not just about feeling good or escaping reality.
So what is it about then?
He thinks these experiences can connect us to something way bigger than ourselves.
A source of wisdom?
Yeah, like a guiding force. He calls it the Gaian mind sometimes.
Or the transcendent other?
Right. It's almost mystical.
It does have that quality.
And McKenna was definitely influenced by, like, shamanic traditions.
Yeah, he saw psychedelics as tools to access those ancient ways of knowing.
But he also believed it wasn't just for, like, a select few.
It could be for everyone.
Exactly. So then the question becomes...
How do we bridge that gap?
Exactly. How do we bring these ancient practices and insights into the modern world?
In a responsible way.
Yeah, McKenna thought education was key.
Okay, like what kind of education?
He talked about psychedelic literacy.
Psychedelic literacy.
Yeah, a way of understanding these experiences,
Okay.
grounded in both science and spirituality.
I like that. It's a good balance.
He also advocated for decriminalization.
Because
He said prohibition just makes things worse, fuels the black market, makes it harder to ensure safety.
it makes sense if we want to integrate these substances into our culture in a healthy way.
Yeah,
We need to be able to talk about them openly and honestly.
exactly, without fear of judgment or punishment.
And there's all this research coming out now about the therapeutic potential of psychedelics.
Right, for things like depression, anxiety, addiction.
It feels like we're on the verge of a major shift in how we view these substances.
I think we are, and it's really exciting.
McKenna saw psychedelics as tools for evolution,
Yeah.
to expand consciousness and create a more just and sustainable world.
It might sound like a far-off dream, but there are things we can do now to move in that direction.
I think what strikes me most about McKenna is that even with all these mind-blowing ideas,
Right.
his message is ultimately one of hope.
Yeah, he believed in humanity's potential to evolve,
To overcome our limitations.
to create a future where we're in harmony with each other and the planet.
And he saw psychedelics as playing a big role in that.
A powerful catalyst.
He thought exploring these hidden dimensions of consciousness
Yeah.
could help us unlock creativity, wisdom, compassion.
The qualities we need to navigate the future.
As we wrap up this deep dive into Food of the Gods,
Yeah.
it's worth thinking about, like, what kind of future we want.
That's a good question.
Are we okay with the way things are? Or do we want something different?
And if we want change,
What role could psychedelics play in helping us get there?
McKenna always reminded us
Of what?
that exploring consciousness is a never-ending journey.
It's not a destination.
Right. It's about the journey.
So keep asking questions,
Yeah.
keep exploring, stay curious.
The future is unwritten.
We have the power to create the world we want.
A world that reflects our highest aspirations.
Well said. That's a perfect way to end this deep dive.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. This was great.
Until next time, keep exploring those hidden dimensions.
Keep an open mind.